Janandana Braja Janandana Yashodanandana Braja Janandana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Gurudeva Gurudeva Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Kodanitai Maya Poshashi Kodanitai Maya Poshashi Jaya Kodanitai Maya Poshashi Kodanitai Maya Poshashi Kodanitai Jaya Maya Poshashi ISKCON Guru Vrinda Ki Jai Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Shishi Kodanitai Maya Poshashi Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Ram Vishnu Krishna Krishna Vishnu So reading from Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita. When in the late 1960s, Srila Prabhupada began introducing large Rath Yatra festivals in the US cities, and when he began installing deities of Radha Krishna in his ISKCON temples, he said that he had learned all these things from his father. The only very important item of Krishna consciousness that he had not learned from his father, he said, was the importance of printing and distributing transcendental literature. That he learned exclusively from his spiritual master, whom he met later in his youth. During Abhai's college years, his father arranged for his marriage, selecting Radharani Datta, the daughter of a merchant family with whom he was associated. For several years, Abhai lived with his family and she with hers, so his marital responsibilities in supporting the family were not immediate. First, he had to finish college. Srila Prabhupada ki. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam. This is Canto 6, Chapter 1, entitled The History of the Life of Ajamil. Bunjana Prapiban Kadan Bunjana Prapiban Kadan Balakam Sneha Yantrita Balakam Sneha Yantrita Bojayan Payayan Mudho Shishikodanitaya Maya Poshashiki Jai Bojayan Payayan Mudho Na Vedagatam Antakam Na Vedagatam Antakam Bunjana Prapiban Kadan Balakam Snehayantrita Bojayan Payayan Mudho Na Vedagatam Antakam Bunjana Prapiban Kadan Balakam Snehayantrita Bojayan Payayan Mudho Navedakatam Antakam
Bunjana Pratibankadan Balakam Snehayantrita Bojayan Payayan Mudho
Bojayan Payayan Mudho Navedakatam Antakam Apitam Kadan Balakam Snehayantrita Bojayan Payayan Mudho Navedakatam Antakam Bunjana Prapiban Kadan Balakam Snehayantrita Bojayan Payayan Mudho Navedakatam Antakam Bunjana while eating, Prapiban while drinking, Kadan while chewing, Balakam unto the child, Snehayantrita being attached by affection, Bojayan feeding, Payayan giving something to drink, Mudha the foolish man, Na not, Veda understood, Agatam had arrived, Antakam death. Translation: when Ajamil chewed food and ate it, he called for the child to chew and eat. And when he drank, he called the child to drink also. Always engaged in taking care of the child and calling his name, Narayan. Ajamil could not understand that his own time was now exhausted and that death was upon him. Responsibly, please. When Ajamil chewed food and ate it, he called the child to chew and eat. And when he drank, he called the child to drink also. Always engaged in taking care of the child and calling his name, Narayan, Ajamil could not understand that his own time was now exhausted, and that death was upon him. About Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is kind to the conditioned soul. Although this man completely forgot Narayan, he was calling his child, saying, Narayan, please come and eat this food. Narayan, please come drink this milk. Somehow or other, therefore, he was attached to the name Narayan. That is called Agyata Sukriti. Although calling for his son, he was unknowingly chanting the name of Narayan, and the holy name of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is so transcendently powerful that his chanting was being counted and recorded. Om Agyanatamiranda Shagananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Meritam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Dvaita Gadadha Shivatsari Gaurabhaktarinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. I don't know if you've noticed in Scotland, when they say they haven't got any time, they say, need time. So if you keep calling out need time, eventually you end up with a Garanga campaign. So that's what happened in Scotland. In this case, Ajamil is calling Narayan, and although his intention is to refer to his child, still the sound vibration of the holy name is unimpeded. No hard and fast rules for chanting these names. But I'm so unfortunate, Lord Chaitanya says, that I have no attraction for them. So hearing about the holy name like this will help us to cultivate an attraction for hearing the holy name, so that when we pick up our bead bags, we're very inspired to chant. So this whole section, this whole story of Ajamil is very inspiring, and we get a glimpse actually when the Yamadutas have a conversation with the Vishnu Dutas, and the Vishnu Dutas are explaining to the Yamadutas how powerful the holy name is. So the Yamadutas don't go near anybody with tulsi beads on their neck, and also for one who regularly chants the holy names, the Vishnu Dutas keep well out of the way, because they know that the Vishnu Dutas will come, and the Vishnu Dutas are much stronger. Yamadutas are the assistants for Yamaraj, and they escort the soul from the body into particular situations which are relevant for the soul's reformation. The soul doesn't come willingly or voluntarily. Then the way the material universe is set up, then involuntarily you will be forced to reform. So in this case, Ajamil wasn't directly aware of what was happening, but his chanting of the name Narayan was being counted and recorded. So that's interesting, isn't it? Like right now, this is going out. I don't know if it's, but everything's being recorded. We're on Facebook all the time. It's actually not Facebook, it's Krishna book, and he's aware of everything that's going on. So every time we say the holy name, then it has a significant effect. Of course, in Ajamil's case, he wasn't chanting Namaparad because he wasn't consciously aware of, although he was committing sinful activity, he wasn't committing the sinful activity on the strength of chanting the holy name. So therefore his chanting is considered Namabas, which is shadow of the name. And Namabas, although it can't take you into Braj, it can take you to Vaikuntha. And in this case, when the Vishnu Dutas did come to Ajamil, they said that, you're not ready to go back right now. Okay, you've been chanting the names, but now you need to practice devotional service for some time. So Ajamil had a chance. He got a glimpse of what was going to happen. The same happened with Narada Muni and the hunter. Narada Muni showed the hunter Mugara, what would happen to him. And then the hunter became very enthusiastic to change his ways. In the same way, Ajamil got a glimpse, and so then he was very inclined to want to change. So for whatever reason, even if it's out of fear, that we take to devotional service, which is generally the majority of conditioned souls that take up devotional service, because they're in a distressed condition. So distress means that they're experiencing fear and anxiety of one type or another. So sometimes that distress is a blessing, because then it gives the jiva the inspiration to take up devotional service. But then what the jiva has to remember is that he was in a very distressful condition, and not forget and think, well, I've been chanting now and I can feel like I feel free from all that karma that I had. So maybe I can go back out and be a top footballer, or make a film and a song, do a nice record and make millions of pounds and be a really cool guy, real cool enjoyer. So when you take up the process of chanting and devotional service, it brings auspiciousness, and it brings a sense of happiness. Now we have to be careful that we don't relax back into our enjoying mood and think that we can again take advantage of the material energy. Anyway, in the case of Ajamil, he didn't do that. He definitely was very, very sorry. You'll hear later on. He laments. He was very, very bad towards his parents and his original wife. And he looks back on his life and he laments very pitifully for his condition. And that's one of the prerequisites for chanting nicely, is to chant with remorse, heart-rending remorse. It's described like that. To chant with attention and heart-rending remorse, to feel very, very sorry for the way that we have been. So that takes a little bit of emotional excavation sometimes when you're chanting. Because you may be just chanting and you're just trying to get the chanting over, or you're getting bored, or you're feeling tired and distracted, and how to override that and connect with how the soul is feeling. And the soul is feeling remorseful. It's interesting because we know that Krishna hears sincere chanting, and we may be thinking, well, I'm not really that sincere, so that's why my chanting is not so good, because I'm not chanting very sincerely, because I'm not a very sincere person. But it's interesting. It's not that some people are sincere and some people aren't sincere, because everybody is spirit soul, then everybody is 100% sincere. But it's just a question of, can you push through your false ego and connect with your real ego, with your real identity? And if you can, then you can understand that you're 100% sincere. That's the challenge. Can you not be distracted by your false ego? And can you identify with your real self, which is completely 100% sincere and wants to completely surrender and absorb in serving in an unconditional, uninterrupted way? That's what the soul is. And then all these other little voices that are going on when we're chanting, like, I can't stand him over there, and I've got a hole in my sock, and it's so cold in the temple room, and this hot air is blowing in my face, and it's making me feel really uncomfortable. All these things, these aren't our voices, actually. This is the false ego filtering through. And underneath that is the jiva, and the jiva is just crying remorsefully, oh, I'm so sorry that I left you, Krishna. Please pick me up from this ocean of birth and death. Somehow or other, I don't even know how it happened, but somehow or other I've fallen into this ocean. But that's not important. The fact is I'm in the ocean. Imagine if you came up to a person, right, and he's in the ocean, and you throw him a rope, and he says, no, before you throw me the rope, I'm trying to work out how I came into the ocean. I need to try and find out how it happened. Could you do an investigation for me to find out you just grab the rope, you just get out. Once you get out, you can maybe, if you're even interested anymore in how you fell in the first place, only so that you don't do it again. But your main concern is somehow or other, please pick me up. So that is the essential mood that should be there when we're chanting. So in the case of Ajamil, it wasn't the essential mood to begin with, but it was namabhas, because he wasn't consciously chanting and then performing sinful activity. And that's the potency. When we go out and we do Rath Yatra and we do Hari Nam, and the people come along and Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, and they come along. Well, that's namabhas, because they don't know that they don't even know it's sinful activity that they're performing. Never mind performing it on the strength of chanting. So they get the full benefit of chanting the holy, coming in contact with the shadow of the holy name, which is very, very powerful. Any questions or comments? Yes, but they say at the beginning, the top step chanting is Shuddha Nam, which is pure chanting. They say the beginning of pure chanting is when we're relating to the holy name in a personal way and we're starting to feel some affection. So Satchidananda Swami often says, chant with affection. Try and chant in a loving way. So, how do you do that? How do you chant in an affectionate way? Anyway, that's what the holy name is teaching us. It's teaching us how to love, how to express love in its purest way. And in Vaikuntha, they're expressing their love, but in a very kind of awe and reverential way. But in Braj Leela, then the love that's being expressed is very intimate. And the holy name is embodying that. Goloka Premadana, Harinama Sankirtana. Narottam Das Thakur explains it's descended from the highest realm. So it's the sweetest Audharya. It's Madhurya and Audharya, but it's especially sweet. It's especially overflowing with sweetness. So, and then Namabhasa is the shadow. So the shadow is at least connected to the object, whereas if it's a reflection, a distorted reflection, then that can appear to be the holy name, but it's not actually the holy name. That's why we avoid hearing the mantra being chanted by Mayavadis, because reflected isn't connected, whereas shadow is touching the object. So potentially, Shuddha Nam will be there. If you keep chanting Namabhas, it's just a question of time. And then if you were to draw a line between the distinction between Namaparad and Namabhas, the person's chanting, and he's really, first round, he's really wanting to chant. And then the second round, he goes from Namabhas, and then he's like, oh, I don't know if I can be bothered doing this. It's another 2 hours. And then it goes into Namaparad, because he's not trying anymore. So as soon as we're not trying and making a full endeavor, a sincere endeavor, then it lapses back into Namaparad. And Namaparad, you can chant Namaparad for 300 lifetimes and you don't make any advancement. And if you're chanting Namabhas, then it's the clearing stage. So then you start to get glimpses of Shuddha Nam from time to time, and deep emotion starts to evoke in the heart and stir you into an awareness and appreciation, and you feel yourself. So it's really good actually to keep a japa diary. I would encourage. I've just started again. I did keep one a long time ago, and I'm keeping again now. Japa diary is like, have you seen them when they're running with the baton? And they take the baton and the person's running. Well, those people that are running with the batons are like the days when you're chanting. So you want to carry on the inspiration from the day before. So it means that day when you're chanting, you have to try and make sure you've got the baton. And the baton is the inspiration, the enthusiasm to chant the holy name. And if you drop the baton from the day before, and the next day you get up and there's no baton there, there's no enthusiasm to chant, then you're in a very dangerous condition actually in Kali Yuga, to not have enthusiasm to chant. If you were to count now how many bead banks there are sitting in the United Kingdom, there's a lot more bead bags than there are people chanting the holy name. So those that get up every day to pick up the holy name and chant again means that they have some enthusiasm at least. So that baton has been carried from one day to the next. So the japa diary is nice because it forces you to kind of collect your thoughts and think, okay, what happened this morning? What went right? What went wrong? What can I take with me? What's my takeaway for the next day? So that when I when I pick up the bead bag, I pick it up running. We hit the ground running. From when we wake up, we're all the time thanking Lord Nityananda for this opportunity, for him showing his mercy. We thank Srila Prabhupada. And then by the time we get the bead bag on after Mangalati, we're already running. So then there's a chance we can be chanting Namabas. If there's no sinful activity going on, we're trying to follow everything as best we can, and we're not being offensive to devotees, and we're cooperating nicely, then we can chant Namabas. And that's why we recite the 10 offenses to the holy name, because that helps us to avoid committing offenses which will force us into the Namaparad. Namaparad is offensive stage. So if we're chanting and we're thinking this is just imagination, if we're chanting and we're trying to make some interpretation, we're chanting and we're not following instructions of the spiritual master, and if we're chanting and we're not being attentive, we may be making no other offense than just being inattentive. And being inattentive, that waters all the other offenses. All the other offenses will flourish just by being inattentive. If you've ever done it at times, you just find yourself chanting and you're not really thinking, and you're disconnected really. And then suddenly these like really heavy material desires start coming up and you think, wow, where did that come from? I thought my chanting was okay this morning. What's happened is the accumulation of inattentive chanting has started to feed all these nasty things in the heart, and they all start to come up, So they say that every person has cancer already in their body, but only because the immunity system, they're able to override the nasty things that are there in the body. So similarly, when we're chanting, we can take it for granted that we have cancerous attitudes and negative mentalities already in there. Unless we make an endeavor, then they can override and they can consume us, and then they can eventually kill our enthusiasm to chant. If we're always fighting and we're always there's a book actually called Quantum Healing by Dr. Chopra, Deepak Chopra. It was given to me when I was in Udupi, because I had Hep C for a while, and Dr. Shiv Kumar, he said you should read this book, it's really good. And in the book Quantum Healing, he shows these people that had cancer, and just by the strength of their determination, they were able to get free from it. One was this general guy, and he was told he had it, and he would imagine that all the cells, all the cancer cells were these black soldiers, and he was fighting them with these white soldiers. So we'd go into this whole meditation of annihilating all these black soldiers with these white soldiers. And after a few weeks of that, his cancer cleared. He completely overrid it. So it's very important that we have the right attitude, that we have sufficient knowledge, sambandha gyan, so that when we go onto the battlefield of the mind, on the mental platform, we have so much inspiration that we're able to chant in a very focused and intense way. There has to be a certain amount of intensity. To go from Namaparad is like the gravitational pull of the false ego. And to get outside of the Namaparad, we have to be going more intensely to break free. Just like when you're breaking free from the G-force, once the satellite is up outside the gravitational pull, it doesn't take anything, it's just floating around. There's hardly any energy for it to remain in orbit. So, and we don't want to make our lives more difficult, we want to make them easier. So by having a very intense, focused japa period, we can break free from the G-force of the false ego. And it means throughout the day we can just float through our devotional activities. Everything is very, very easy. But if we don't make that endeavor, then we're being dragged down by the gravitational pull of the earth all throughout the day, and everything is a hassle, everything is a trip, everyone's a pain in the neck, everything's wrong, everything's awkward. I'm sure we've all experienced that.
So the way to facilitate the gap between non-class and non-shooter, that stage between non-class and non-shooter.
And Shuddhanam. You mean how can we quickly get to Shuddhanam from Namabas? Yeah. Well, Krishna says two things. He says the reason why perfection in Bhakti Yoga is difficult is there's two reasons. One is you have to remain attached to me for a long time. And the other is even when you do, I'm still reluctant to give perfection. So it's just how long is it going to take us before we come to the point where we're humbly begging Krishna, please give me this. Because we can't do it by our own endeavor, you see. So initially we're thinking, well, what's the best strategy, you know? Should I run around the temple room at 17 miles an hour, a slight incline, so that I can just spin round? And if I use a bead bag that's made out of purple corduroy and soak these tulsi beads in jasmine oil, will that increase my chances of getting from Namabast to Shuddhanam? But really what's going on is Krishna is looking to see the sincerity and the steadfastness. And that's why Rupa Goswami explains there has to be confident endeavor sustained over a long period of time. Patience has to be there. Now, if we become impatient, and Bhaktisiddhanta says the same thing actually, he says when we become impatient, what we do is we slacken. When you become impatient, you slacken, you drop off. Can you sustain confident enthusiasm for a long period of time and not slacken off? And so Krishna is like, are you chanting this for your own pleasure or are you chanting it for my pleasure? And you're, no, I'm chanting it for your pleasure. Okay, so then I won't give you any pleasure. And then we'll know whether it's for your pleasure or whether it's for my pleasure. So Krishna is doing that also to see, you know, are you really doing this for me? Dhruva Maharaj, 6 months it took him, but it wasn't instantaneous. It took 6 months for him to convince the Lord that he wanted to do it for his pleasure. Well, actually, it started off as for Dhruva Maharaj's pleasure, but then as he continued on, when he finally got darshan of the Lord, then he didn't want it for his pleasure anymore. But what's interesting there is Tivrena, is that although Dhruva Maharaj was ill-motivated, he had intensity, steadfastness. Tivrena means steadfast, steady, you know. So if you can have this quality of being steady, then you're a prime candidate for pleasing the Lord and then him giving you that special mercy. You know? It is only by mercy that we get it. It's only by mercy. It's only by Lord Nityananda's mercy that we're all here in the temple room right now, and we have all this facility, we have all these books. And devotee was just saying, actually, when we did this festival, oh yeah, it was my friend here, he was saying it's amazing how so few devotees are able to do so much. We're able to put on a festival, have a huge feast, have nice talks, kirtan, beautifully dressed deities, decorations, everything's just, it's like almost 50 demigods came down and gave us a hand and then disappeared after the festival, you know. We're wondering how it happened. So when we become Tivrena, when we become steadfast and very, very determined, then it's only a matter of time before Krishna will give, you know. Sometimes he will just give you a glimpse of the halo of perfection, but he won't give you everything straight away, because it could lead to being offensive or becoming proud or looking down on other devotees. So he wants to see that we are determined. I mean, really, Srila Prabhupada said it took him 40 years to perfect his japa. So I think he was just kind of letting us know it's not going to happen overnight, you know. But it's worth it. Upon gaining this, one thinks there's no greater gain. It's not that when you get up there, it's like, oh, is this all there is? It's like when you get it, it's like, wow, this is like 1,000,000 times more than my endeavor was ever worth, even if you're trying for lifetimes.
There's an online question by him and I will read it out. Hare Krishna. I am interested in the true self merging through the false ego. Right. I am interested in the true self emerging through the false ego. Can you say a little more?
Heyman is saying he's interested in the real self emerging from the false ego. Okay. So we have in the shop, in Krishna's shop, we have bottles of false ego dissolver. They're like little bottles of acid, and you pour them in through your ears, and it dissolves the false ego. That's the holy name. Srila Prabhupada said the holy name dissolves the false ego. So when something's being dissolved, Shishi Kodinitai Maya Pashashi Ki Jai. It means it's disappearing particle by particle. It's not an immediate. I mean, sometimes you see in Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, sometimes he would just embrace somebody and it would be an immediate, the false ego would just, immediately everything would just go all in one go, you know. But generally, in the present day, the way Lord Chaitanya seems to want it to happen is that a devotee achieves this freedom from false ego over a sustained period of time, and the devotee becomes more and more free. And as he becomes more and more free of his false ego, then the effulgence of the soul starts to shine more and more. It becomes very bright-faced. That brightness is coming from the effulgence of the soul. It's no longer impeded anymore by the false ego. And then that encourages other people to take up the process. They see, wow, I remember what he was like a few years ago, and now, you know, he looks so happier and so much more bright-faced. You know, this must work, and they want to try it as well. So it seems that Lord Chaitanya is using us as examples to encourage other people that you can come from very degraded situations where your mental faculties have been very compromised by the material energy, and then there can be an amazing transformation can take place. And then other people are thinking, wow, well, if he can do it, then maybe I've got a chance also, and they become encouraged also to take up the process. So it's generally a gradual. And as the false ego does start to emerge out of the mist of the false ego, then we're very pleased to see that actually underneath it all, we're actually quite humble and quite unassuming and quite desireless in the sense of wanting anything for ourselves. We're just happy to serve and see others being pleased. And that is the real symptom of a person who's achieved pure consciousness, is this compassion and this freedom from greed, lust, anger, all the lower qualities. They all start to disappear. And then the soul, Lord Rama describes that the soul, the good soul, is like the sun, is shining like the sun, very, very bright and very effulgent, very positive, very happy. That's the soul. So the soul doesn't get depressed. It may look like the sun has got depressed in Scotland from time to time, but if you can get high enough over the clouds, you'll see that the sun is always happy, always smiling brightly. So it's how to get over the clouds of the false ego. And sometimes it's not so bad. Like yesterday, it was cloudy, but then every now and again the sun would peep out and encourage us that it was actually there, you know. So when you're practicing Krishna consciousness, sometimes the false ego is very stormy and it covers us. And then sometimes we're able to penetrate through that. And then as we go on, the clouds get less and less, and the amount of time that they cover the soul gets less and less. And then we become confident, okay, it's covered right now, but the wind is blowing so powerfully, it can't cover it for very long because it'll all get blown out the way. So when it's very windy, you'll see the weather changes very quickly because the clouds come and they go so fast. So as we become more intense in our practice of Krishna consciousness, then those clouds of false ego come and go much more quickly. And then we become more confident. This is not going to last very long. I'm just going to continue on. I'm not going to slacken my endeavor due to impatience. If we're passionate when we're practicing Krishna consciousness and we want a result and we're fixed on getting that result and achieving that goal, and then we don't, then we slacken. That's the nature of passion. When you don't achieve, you lose enthusiasm. When you achieve, then you become enthusiastic. But devotional service is free of passion. So how to have that intensity, but not that passion. And when intensity is sustained over a long period of time, then it's mode of goodness, then it goes into the mode of goodness. You see with Srila Prabhupada, he was achieving so many things. Practically, he was simultaneously doing so many things. And yet, when you saw Srila Prabhupada, he was very, very peaceful, very relaxed. And yet he was doing, phenomenal amount. He did more in one lifetime than most people would do in 100 lifetimes. And these people could be like really passionate, running around doing things. So you see how the material energy, it just becomes very compliant. If your intention is pure and your endeavor is steadfast, then the material energy becomes your maidservant. It will assist you. And the mind will become the friend. That's how you conquer the mind, with loving devotion. The mind's, if you, instead of hitting the mind and intimidating the mind, if you treat the mind like a little child, okay, I know it's not so nice the weather today, but let's just do it anyway for Krishna. And then we'll get an extra sweet ball for you. Oh, okay then. So the mind's like a little spoiled child. So we just have to coax the mind and reassure the mind, and not take it too seriously. Actually, you can imagine if you had a little spoiled child, a little brat, with you, and every time you wanted to do something, you just said to the child, "Do you think this is okay that we're doing this?" And the mind would go, "Nah, don't want to do it, nah." But don't you think, nah? So you don't even you don't listen to the child. You just say, "Look, we're going to go here now. And we're going to do this." And put that back on the shelf. We're not going to be buying that. No, put it back. We're not into buy those things. We're going over here to get some nice things for Krishna. So the mind is like a naughty child in the supermarket, just grabbing things off the shelf. It sees something. Oh no, I want this. No, why can't I have it? Why can't? No. Why is it only this time? Why can't it be later? How much longer do I have to? The mind is always moaning, whining. So we don't have to listen to the mind or take the mind seriously. We can just reassure the mind and encourage it and coax it like a child. Come on, don't be so naughty. We're going to do this for Krishna. You'll be pleased when we do this. When Krishna's pleased, you'll be so much happier. And then if you give in to the mind and say, no, okay, we'll just do whatever you want. You know what the mind finally will say? If you just keep saying, okay, look, we'll do whatever you want. What do you want to do? You want to go down to the nightclub? Okay, no problem. You want to get these trousers? No problem. You want to make this amount of money? No problem. You want to take this intoxicant? No, we'll just do everything. What is it? You want this? Okay, fine. And then finally, you do all that, and then you say to the mind, what do you want to do now? And you know what the mind says? It says, okay, I want you to jump off a building now. And you say, well, what? But I did everything you want. And the mind says, yeah, then that shows that you're useless, because you're supposed to control me, not listen to me. So there you go, that's the mind, our old friend the mind. That's eventually what it does, it self-destructs. Keep doing what it wants, eventually it'll just say, okay, let's self-destruct. So that's a pretty heavy device that we've got inserted inside our skulls. And we have to learn how to deal with that in such a way that the mind becomes a friend. So instead of all the horrible, negative things that it normally says, the mind starts saying positive, encouraging things, Wow, another day to do devotional service. Wow, a step closer to Krishna. Wow, I'm so fortunate. Nityananda is so kind. We're going to engage with the people and give them great fortune and blessings. We're going to give them prasadam and give them the holy name. That's when the mind becomes the friend, And the mind is at its strongest first thing in the morning, because the mind has just had full control of everything going on for the last 6 or 7 hours while you've been completely unconscious. So when you first wake up and those eyes first wake up, then the first thing you should do is say, Jai Nitai, thank you, Nityananda. immediately. Mahaprabhu has just been explaining that to you. He's doing an initiation lecture and he's telling his disciples, I want you to all, when you first wake up in the morning, thank Lord Nityananda. Because he said, this ISKCON is just the personification of his mercy. Because Lord Nityananda's mood was everybody should get this opportunity for Krishna consciousness without discrimination. That's what Srila Prabhupada embodied, the mercy of Lord Nityananda. They went to Prabhupada and they said, Prabhupada, this devotee, he's chanting Hare Krishna and he's so spaced out, it takes him 14 hours to chant 2 rounds. We can't get him to do any service. And Prabhupada said, that is his service, chanting 16 rounds. So that's all he did, And there was another one, he was called Peter, but they used to call him Pigpen, because he spent most of the time in the sleeping bag, And they said, Prabhupada, he does nothing, he's just in the sleeping bag all the time, And Prabhupada said, you cannot tolerate? And so that devotee eventually, he got initiated and he became a really, really a Sanskrit scholar. He translated all the books of the Goswamis. He left his body 10 years ago, Kusakrata Prabhu. And he went, he became so, and Prabhupada could see the potential in everybody, So if we can do that, if we can see everyone's potential, then automatically we'll be able to see our own potential. That's actually, if you really want to test your level of Krishna consciousness, it's not by how well you chant, or by how well you give out books, or by how well you peel potatoes, but it's in your relational skills. Do you have the ability to encourage people to practice their own Krishna consciousness? And if you do, if people like being around you and they feel inspired and encouraged, then you can say, okay, I'm starting to develop a good level of Krishna consciousness. That's like the most important way. Your ability to cooperate and inspire others is really how you determine your level of Krishna consciousness. In an international society, it's the essential ingredient. If all the members are becoming more and more skilled in their relational abilities, then it becomes such a thriving community. Everybody wants to be part of it. Everybody wants to be in a situation where they feel protected and loved and nurtured, and their real potential is being brought out. They're becoming empowered. They're doing things beyond they thought they could ever be able to do. Who wouldn't want to be in a society like that? So that's what Srila Prabhupada did with all the young devotees that first came. He empowered them to do all kinds of amazing things, open temples, preach in Russia, become spiritual masters, initiate disciples. Prabhupada was so convinced in the power of the holy name that if you just chant the holy name, you'll be able to do everything that's required. You can chant without offense. The pure chanting of the holy name is so powerful. So the real self is that a humble, insignificant servant who just wants to serve and not look for anything. Nadanam najanam nasundaram. I have no desire to accumulate wealth. I, the soul, have no desire to accumulate wealth. Nor do I, the soul, desire beautiful women. Nor do I, the soul, want any number of followers. I, the soul, only want your causeless devotional service life after life. I only want that. That's what I, the soul, only wants. And anything else that you think you want isn't the soul. It's the soul filtered through the false ego. Oh, but I really need a pair of gold-plated wellies. It's the latest thing with thermal heated insulation or whatever else it is that we think that we need. But the soul doesn't want anything other than just to serve. The soul wants only pure love as well. It just wants to serve in an unmotivated, uninterrupted way. That's what the soul is hankering for. And the challenge is, can you not be distracted and deviated by the things that are covering the soul and forcing you to misidentify with what you really want? How many people come back with things that they bought and then look at it and think, why did I buy that? I didn't really want that. But because they couldn't connect with themselves, who they really were, then they were. That's what advertising is all about, how to condition people to want things that they don't need and make them think that they need them. It's like you see the picture, it's this beautiful beach, beautiful blue sky, palm trees, beautiful lady, and she's got this car. I don't know how they got the car on the beach in the first place, but there's a car there. And you're thinking, if I get the car, I get the blue sky, I get the beach, I get the beautiful girl, okay, I'll buy the car. But really they should be thinking, well, what I really want is eternality, bliss, and knowledge. That's what I want. I don't want the car. I'm just getting the car because I think that's what's going to bring me eternal, blissful knowledge. That's what I'm thinking. So we want to avoid all those distractions and connect with what the real I, and how to achieve what the real I really wants, which is this eternal blissful knowledge. This is what we want. We can't get it in the material world. You can't buy it. You can't make it. You can't work for it. You can't achieve it outside of getting the mercy of Lord Nityananda, Lord Chaitanya, Radha Krishna. So ego is real. The ego is real. But what we're identifying with it as is what's false. And false means it's temporary, so that's the other problem as well. If you follow what the false ego wants, it won't stay the same, it'll change. And what you did want, you don't want anymore. And what you think you want, you won't want once you've got it. They reckon it takes about 6 weeks. I was listening to a blog by Shiva Ramraj, and he was saying that the psychologists have analyzed that when you buy something, the pleasure that's derived from achieving it lasts for about 6 weeks. So every 6 weeks, you'll need a new car or a new phone or a new pen or a new, if people had the money, then that's what they would be doing. Every 6 weeks, they'd be getting a new car. And that's what people are doing. If you look at people who've got a lot of money, Shudras anyway, they don't know what to do with the money. You give a Shudra a lot of money, he just keeps getting a new car every 6 weeks. Ends up with all these cars and all the total rubbish, actually, in the end.
How can we understand the difference between material necessity and just desire? Because you can't only have dwellings in forms, so how can we know when it's just a false ego what one, when it's actual?
Well, to ask for the material things to serve Krishna is fine, There was one time they couldn't pay the rent. Malati and Shamasunda were in this place, and they were in a very difficult situation, and they were going to be getting kicked out of the property if they didn't come up with the money. So they were really, really in anxiety what they were going to do, And they were walking along chanting their japa, and over a fence, $100 note blew over, and they couldn't believe it, So they grabbed it. I mean, for us, it's like a £50 note. I mean, you never even see £50 notes, right? I've only seen them a few times. Then the next minute, another one came over, and then another one, and then another one, and they were just all blowing down the street, and they were grabbing them all. And they don't know to this day where they came from. And when they went back, Srila Prabhupada wasn't surprised at all. He was kind of smiling, So if you want those wellies and you're going to do some devotional service in them, then those wellies will just come flying out of the sky. They'll just come. Everything will come. Whatever you need will come. Just like what's happening now. Everything we need is coming, We're seeing it like anything. It's just being laid on a plate and handed to us. Everything that we want, it's just coming. So one thing you can learn in devotional service, which is really useful, is when you want something, don't make an extraneous endeavor, pratyahara, to achieve it. Just say, okay, well, if I really want it, it will come. And if I don't, then Krishna will accept that Krishna doesn't really want me to have it, And so you may want something like, I wanted something that was really expensive, and it didn't happen. And so I thought, okay, so when I think about it, it wasn't really that necessary, really. So Krishna didn't give it, so okay, so I'm fine with that. And then immediately the desire just goes. So you can be like that. You may really, really want something, and you can think, well, yeah, if I had that car, it would be nice. Well, maybe it wouldn't be so nice because maybe I'd crash it because it's so fast. Or maybe it's not really what's needed and it'll just distract me. I'll end up just driving around everywhere for no reason, just to be in the car. So therefore Krishna hasn't given me, And sometimes we also have to appreciate that maybe Krishna's already given us what we need, but he's not given us what we want. And sometimes you can look at that and you can think, well, actually, these wellies are fine, there's nothing wrong with them. Krishna's already provided me, but I wanted the latest turbocharged, funky wellies that I've got solar panels on them so that they stay hot, Maybe that's not really that necessary. And I've just been reading in the CC, Lord Chaitanya he's quoting Krishna. Krishna will fulfill your material desires, but in such a way that you won't keep petitioning him again and again and again. And eventually he will bring you to him. So Krishna knows better than you what you want. You may even think, well, I've got all these reasons why I want this, and it may not happen. Or Krishna may give you all kinds of facilities. Like Dhruva Maharaj would say, no, I don't want it. I don't want the planet now. I'm fine. I've got your darshan. And Krishna, no, because you'll make a really good person in charge of this planet. I'm going to give you the pole star. No, I don't want it. Well, that's why I'm giving you, because you don't want it. That's why I want you to have it, because you don't want it anymore. You've given up your desire now. So therefore, you're qualified. So now I'm going to give it you. ISKCON Govinda ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Gaura Premanandi, Haribo, Gaura Bhaktavrinda ki jai.